Look at the modern skyline of London. Towers of glass and steel dominate the horizon. It is a sprawling metropolis of 9 million people, where over 300 languages are spoken. A city that feels as though it has simply always been here. But 2,000 years ago, this capital did not exist. You would find yourself in a muddy tidal marshland, a bleak stretch of the River Thames that was useless to almost everyone, except a few Roman legions looking for a strategic place to cross. This raises a difficult question. How did a desolate swamp transform into the economic and cultural heart of the United Kingdom? It is easy to imagine a timeline of steady, peaceful progress, centuries of merchants trading and builders laying bricks until a megacity appeared. However, the historical record tells a much more violent story. London's superpower is its scar tissue. To understand how this city grew, we have to look at the moments it was almost annihilated. Every time it burned, bled, or choked on its own success, it used those catastrophes as the blueprints to rebuild stronger. The cycle started early. In 43 AD, the Romans established a trading post called Londinium. Just 17 years later, Queen Boudica of the Iceni tribe marched her army into the settlement and burned it to the ground. Dig beneath modern London today, and you will find a thick layer of distinct red ash from that fire. The Romans responded by constructing a massive defensive perimeter around the ruins. These thick layers of stone and red brick formed a permanent barrier against future attacks, securing the settlement's future. That barrier locked the city's geographic footprint into place. Centuries later, when the Roman Empire collapsed and the legions withdrew, the economy tanked and the population dwindled to a few hundred squatters. Even as the incoming Saxons avoided the ruins, the sheer mass of those Roman walls remained. They provided a ready-made fortress. When Viking raids escalated in the late 9th century, King Alfred the Great moved the Saxon population back inside those ancient defenses. Without the fire that forced the Romans to build that wall, the settlement might have vanished back into the Thames mud. By the 1660s, the city had swelled far beyond its Roman borders, but medieval London was a structural death trap. Houses were built from timber with thatched roofs, packed so tightly together that the overhanging upper floors practically touched across the narrow alleys. Then disaster struck twice. First, a severe plague wiped out a quarter of the population. The very next year, in September 1666, a spark in a Pudding Lane bakery caught a dry wind. As this map shows, the ensuing fire raced through the streets, consuming everything along the river. For 4 days, the flames acted as a ruthless reset button. 85% of the walled city was reduced to ash, leaving 100,000 people homeless. This total erasure cleared the way for strict new building regulations that required houses to be built from brick and stone. Architect Christopher Wren seized the moment to redesign the skyline. His crowning achievement, the stone dome of the new St. Paul's Cathedral, rose above the rebuilt streets as a symbol of this more resilient era. The Great Fire physically deleted a dangerous medieval design, forcing a permanent modernization of the capital's layout and materials. By the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution brought an explosive population boom. In 1801, London housed 1 million people. By 1901, that number spiked to over 6 million. The city was choking on its growth. This map shows where cholera outbreaks bloomed along the Thames. By 1858, the river was so thick with sewage that Parliament suspended sessions due to the Great Stink. This crisis forced the government to act. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette designed a network of miles of giant brick arches beneath the streets to channel waste away from the drinking water. The Victorians moved hundreds of millions of gallons of raw waste through these subterranean tunnels every single day, an engineering feat so robust that the modern city relies on it today. London's success nearly killed its own citizens. It took a lethal public health emergency to force the subterranean engineering required to sustain life at this scale. In 1940, the city faced a threat from the air. German bombers pounded the capital during the Blitz, leveling entire neighborhoods. By the end of the Second World War, 1 million buildings were damaged or destroyed. Post-war London was a broke, exhausted city, watching its overseas empire rapidly collapse. It faced a desperate shortage of labor to clear the rubble and restart the economy. To survive, the city invited workers from across its former colonies. In 1948, the Empire Windrush arrived, carrying hundreds of passengers from the Caribbean, the first wave of immigration that redefined the capital's population. These physical and economic voids also allowed for the redevelopment of abandoned areas. The ruined docklands in the East End were eventually cleared to make way for the skyscrapers of Canary Wharf, establishing London as a global financial center. The destruction of the Blitz accelerated the collapse of the old imperial order, creating both the physical space and the urgent labor demand that defined London's transition into a globalized capital. When you stand on a crowded London street corner today, you are looking at a living map of survival. The jarring architectural contrasts, a medieval church sitting directly beside a glass and steel skyscraper, function as the city's physical scar tissue. Each mismatched block tells the story of an area that burned down, blew up, or collapsed, and was carefully stitched back together. A city survives through the generations of people who continually pull it out of the ashes and push it forward. Over 2,000 years, London has been invaded, burned, plagued, and bombed. Every time it fell, it adapted, absorbed new people, and engineered new solutions. That relentless cycle of catastrophe and reinvention is the true foundation of the capital.